Welcome to the Nigerian Audio Podcast, people. I'll tell you what, I'm from where they work hard to not simplify things, but I live in a world where to make things simple is one of the hardest tasks. So by default, I'm screwed. Fucked. And I'm not alone. Similarly, if you're on the boat where it's, my parents are from where common sense does not exist. I mean, literally, where there's no space for common sense. But you were born and raised where common sense thrives. Say less. Join me on this journey where I speak about how to position and navigate into this world using an order view. This order view in its simplest form is mirroring situations. Sometimes life gives you multiple choice questions, but you still want to fill in the gap. You know? That's the ordinance in you, pal. You gotta embrace that. So join me, follow me on Instagram, it's Nigerian Audio Podcast. Subscribe to this and listen back on this and have fun. I think I'll just get straight to it. So the first thing is, I actually got my microphones like 2020, kind of tried to start a podcast, set up things, but then I just never got the energy, or procrastination just took all over me. I just never got to it. Now in 2025, 23rd July, now I'm trying to get straight to it. And also, I think it's just always been those voices in your head. It's like, you know, those things you're thinking or those things you feel like you should share. I think it's just the perfect timing. And I'm like, okay, I might as well just go for it now because it just keeps ringing in your head. You know, you have to get it out there. Well, Nigerian Order, welcome everyone. I don't want to say, obviously I'm Nigerian, but I think the ordinance part or Nigerian Order is pretty much like a way where the ordinance, it's not trying to be unique or anything like that. It's just more like how you navigate and mirror situations with data, empathy, communication to channel your ordinance. It's literally a mechanism for you to see things and your way, your uniqueness, right? It usually more like you're trying to deposit your perspective, if that makes sense. So if you kind of look at things the way it is, what's the data saying? If you were able to empathize, then if you're able to kind of have an idea of how you communicate that. And when I say have an idea of how you communicate that, it could be you trying to communicate with that situation as well, or anything of such. But basically, I'm not a fan of acronyms. You know, I would go maybe DEC, but the E in between is intentional. I breed empathy myself. And it's a type of thing where I feel like the way others kind of look at empathy might be different for me. For me, it's more like empathy is when you kind of are able to look at things from the other person's perspective without what you know about yourself being in the picture, right? It's you genuinely trying to see, put yourself in others' shoes and kind of mirror that situation. So it's almost like, sometimes you look into the mirror, then you can see yourself, but you can not actually see the view the mirror is seeing of you, if that makes sense, right? But yeah, this podcast is probably gonna, go in that direction where we're trying to use empathy, data, and communication to kind of channel different conversation or navigate different situations based on what we are, based on coming from motherland, coming from Nigeria, coming from Africa, you're in the diaspora now. By the end of the day, that's the root. When I mean that's the root, it's pretty much like that's what made you. Can we say it's more like a coincidence that you have roots from the motherland? When I say motherland, it's more like maybe Africa. So this could cater for anyone, really. I think if you listen to my initial intro in 2020, I kind of was saying something around view from where common sense does not exist, and you find yourself in a place where common sense thrives. That was the best, that's the best way I could paint it. But yeah, it's the selling your uniqueness, your traits, and more like, trying to push for those outcomes we want. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. This is the intro bit, but I think I would just get straight to it. Like I said, I'm not trying to overly think it because I got stuck in my head since 2020. I think this is where I want to just, speak freely, and someone out there kind of resonate, have that same idea or struggling, and can use this 3 mechanisms to kind of go around things, which is data, empathy, communication. It revolves around empathy basically, and that's intentional for being in the middle. And I think on this episode, I just basically want to speak about how the world still don't get us. And what I mean is like, they still don't get us, you know? Do you actually see things like that? When I speak from a perspective, it's basically saying like, we can rant all day about how marginalization or maybe race or, you know, different things everyone is dealing with in life, maybe color off your skin or where you're from or, you know, culture shock or like how living abroad and, you know, making it work and you don't see yourself moving back or anything like that. But basically, you also need to understand that like you're from where you're from is where you're from, right? Regardless of where you find yourself now. It's very okay to kind of have that open arms, you know, move and kind of adjust and embrace change, which I do understand. But we need to understand that if you're trying to empathize and see where you're at or the way people treat you, you also need to, you know, kind of look at the kind of demons or what everyone is dealing with, right? So, great nation, we Africans. And it's almost like, yeah, we have so much ability, we have so much prospect, right? Ambitious. Or if I was to say today, like, oh, what would someone say about Nigerians? And lots to say, you know, beautiful culture, amazing people, you know, friendly, funny, very competitive, or more like they just win at everything they do. Like, that's amazing, right? And we're doing all these things, but if you look at it, we're still not on the table, right? And it's almost like I'm going to use the scenario right now. So think about the office workspace, like a workspace, right? I work and you have the leaders, which is the boards or like the guys at the table making the decisions, business decisions when you probably work in that same company. But every other person speak great about you or people can see your potentials. But the thing is, you're still not on that table to kind of make those impactful decisions. So it's two ways. It's more like, are you pretty much, you know, in yourself and looking at what if only you matters. It's like, oh, I'm great, I'm super, I can do all these things. But at the end of the day, you actually even not at that position where you can maybe change things. So is there a way you can kind of suck it up and kind of do things or act on things to create that channel or that thing you want to change, that uniqueness or your difference, right? It's almost like, well, you need to be in a position to kind of be able to influence others or, you know, do something about it. And then you can change things your way. So it's pretty much like, we're still not with decision makers, even though we're very sound, right? So you start to realize it's so hard. It's so hard to really to kind of, it's almost impossible to deliver that one job of getting to that table with our trades. And then that's when you start realizing that, you know, it's no such thing as free lunch, right? It's not something that people just give you. It's something that you kind of have to take. Chances are never given, they're taken. But then when you think about it, maybe just with data, empathy and communication, we can start to unravel, we can start to navigate, you know, situations on and kind of the others would just probably have to jump to actually even get to the table. And I feel like, and when you look at nations or when you look at, you know, it could even be a small like family, let's say a family of 5, you realize, or even friends, you know, when they say 3 is a crowd, it's even amongst 3 friends, right? It's very kind of, it's always like, it's almost very difficult for you, 3 of you to make a decision or channel like a course together, right? It's a lot of work sometimes because there's preference. So this person wants that. And when you look at like where we are coming from or Nigerians in general, you kind of start to see, you know, even though we're one, there's so many differences and layers to this. And then when you look at maybe where we think common sense exists, which is the other side of the world and the developed countries, so to say, might assume they're the ones controlling the world. They're like the leaders in the context of an office space, right? But at the end of the day, they're doing a lot for you to even assume that they are one because there's so much layers into that as well, right? So, one takeaway I want everyone to get maybe from this episode is more like, how do you start shifting from how it should be or why it's not the way you want it, to probably first tackling as it is, you know what I mean? You know, how do the world kind of actually see us now? Sometimes you might actually look at yourself with so much confidence on you can do all these things, but then when it comes to the table or the space, you're probably the laughing stock. It's more like, oh, these guys they've not even started the job. So, and some of these things, if you want to keep it very simple, it's all back to ambition as well. You like it or not, if we go to history and people start talking about different countries, like if you kind of narrow it down, you walk backwards from those conversations, you see it still boils back to just a guy's ambition, because there's still at the end of the day, it was still really about people at the arms of this governance, leadership, military, whatever it is, that human beings like me and you, it's still really different people's cause. Like whatever it is or whoever it is you want to speak about in different countries, it's still really back to this person, that person, this, So I think takeaway would be for us to start, getting to where you think it will be. It's more like, how is it right now? And then how can we move from how is it to probably doing those bits to kind of get to that position. And before you think about it, it's really about your now. So it's almost like we can judge previous generation all we care. There's our now too, which is almost like what we do today. It's what it's what you've done, and you wouldn't even have a chance to kind of explain maybe the nuances or the things that couldn't make you achieve what you're trying to do in your now, because you only just got limited time to live or space. So how do we start shifting from that doers to the save me? Am I the only one seeing this mentality? Like, we're being marginalized so much. Like, whereas it's more like shifting to that doers. And there's few nations we can also kind of look at. They're playing the game, whereas you want to start shifting from talking about how the game is not fair to actually playing the game. And there's so much work. But this is just few things I've kind of been able to come to realization that can probably help everyone in their different space in life to kind of talk around it, which is data, empathy, and communication. The last bit is how, as a Nigerian order, I take a look at the DEC. I look at the data of where I'm coming from, the culture, the whys around a lot of these things, basically saying the outcomes some of our doings or ways try to achieve. So if I view this sometimes with my empathy lens, some of these doings might not be realistic in today, but I've got empathy on the outcomes they were trying to achieve, right? So the whys around it, and I keep that in my arsenal, as some of these things or these doings that are not so much realistic now might apply to some situation in my today's reality, if it won't at least apply for most situations, right? So that's the data bit. So with data and empathy, I'm able to keep it in my arsenal rather than discard it, because they say, some ways or ways you might be able to apply it depending on the situation of today. So rather than just looking at it to say, I don't understand why people do this, it's more like, are you aware of why they try to do it then as well, what they were trying to achieve? And empathy would make you see it might not be feasible, some are laughable, but that's the journey, right? That's you being empathizing with whatever they try to do with that. The last bit is being able to communicate this significance into this reality, or communicate whatever you've kind of deduced, depending on who you're dealing with. This very important bit of it as well, right? So how do you say or convey things to A will be different from how you convey it to B. Networking is one standard that kind of used to understand communication, and what that means is like sometimes you're sending something and the receiving party can't even receive what you're sending. And for you to have a good communication, there are loads of nuances around protocols, around standards, around agreements on how A and B would communicate. In my life, I'm very quick to kind of identify who I'm talking to in the nearest minutes or seconds, right? Or, it's a continuous process, right? But you need to be aware. That's the way communication works. I always say to people, like, if you're calling my phone or dialing me, I don't think communication has started yet until I kind of allow it or kind of respond to it. I know for a fact that you're trying to communicate with me, but I don't think we are communicating yet until, allow that. Sometimes what I can allow is not about being personal. What you can allow might just be a thing of spacing. Maybe you want to pass 100 bouquets to someone, and maybe all they can receive at a time or in every minute is 25. So you have to know people's bandwidth or whatever situation bit of that communication part is to really understand the nuances or standards around how people can receive things or how people can take things or what you're sending to people, what it might look like, because I might be sending something but on the receiving end might look entirely different. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. I look forward to the next one. It's not actually that bad, So yeah, what you guys can do for me if you're listening to this anywhere, commuting, at home, moving, is to follow, like, support, because that way it kind of makes it easier. I think going solo podcasting actually seems to be terrifying, but I'm in it now. I think I've gotten into the rhythm. Maybe I'm speaking too soon, but yeah. And I think one of my other popular opinion is more see people now, which is the video side of people just putting podcasts out there. It's just a bit like, I understand the marketing side of it, obviously, to get audience and to get people. These are ways you can actually do that. But, in my head, I'm just in a pod, I'm just speaking, and I think the focus right now is it's not even what I am or who I am, it's more what I'm saying. You kind of connect with people by just their thoughts, I would say. But so yeah, if you resonate with that as well, show us some love, Yes, the plan is to keep it brief. Expect to have this bi-weekly, and then we shouldn't go above 45 minutes. I think keeping it brief, concise, get straight to it would be the format I'm gunning for. And then obviously things can change along the way. It all depends on the support and the love I get. But I suppose that would be the structure for now. I think bi-weekly releases would be how I'm going to be rolling out the episodes. I'm definitely looking forward to episode 2, and that should be talking around how we're not simplifying things. Obviously, if you want to keep supporting us, I think it's one of those episodes to look out for.